And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast.
I'm so excited. Politics and paranormal. This is like the two things that I'm so obsessed with.
So good, it's scary.
Are you ready?
Welcome to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal Podcast. My name is Jeff Morey, and I am your host. As anyone that follows me knows, I am fascinated with the paranormal. From cryptids to Bigfoot to ghosts to portals and UFOs, especially UFOs. Since I was a teenager, I've always been intrigued and desired to learn the truth behind the unknown and how it correlates with our existence and our spirituality. While I am and will always be a Christian and a believer, a lot of people write off anything remotely paranormal simply because there isn't a clear definition, identification, or most importantly, explanation given for all this activity in the Bible. Many people I know who are deeply spiritual just attest anything paranormal as being demonic and the work of Satan. I've talked about it and discussed it before. I think it is the pinnacle of human arrogance to believe that in all his glory, God simply created only the human race and life on earth. And while this argument is a topic for another show and another day, all of those who, like me, are fascinated by the paranormal are probably well aware of some of the most notorious locations of high strangeness in our country and possibly all over the world. One such location that I have long been fascinated with is Bradshaw Ranch in Sedona, Arizona. For those of you that have never heard of it, Bradshaw Ranch is a historic 90-acre property that used to be owned by stuntman Bob Bradshaw and was sold to the federal government in the year 2000. It was a popular Hollywood Western and commercial filming location from the 1960s to the 1980s. And today it is supposedly used for climate and plant research. That's the official story. Unofficially, Bradshaw Ranch is one of the absolute most notorious paranormal hotspots for all kinds of activity, including UFOs, portals, Bigfoot, temperature and radiation spikes, and more. In fact, it's become so well known in the paranormal world that it's been the subject of countless TV shows, documentaries, and investigations. For paranormal buffs like me, Bradshaw Ranch is the real deal and one of the places I personally would love to visit and have the opportunity to investigate. Well, this week I'm excited to welcome a couple of gentlemen who have had the opportunity to not only investigate and research Bradshaw Ranch, but also the Bigfoot theory as well. So I'm looking forward to their insights, perspectives, and most importantly, experiences that they have had and can share with us. This time, I want to welcome Ron Meyer and Mark Reeder to the show. Welcome, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me.
Good to be here this evening.
Before we talk all about your new book you co-authored, Bradshaw Ranch and Everything Paranormal and High Strangeness, would each of you tell us a little about your background and what led you into exploring the paranormal?
Well, my background with Ron is that he and I have worked together with his educational video company and documentary company for about 20, 25 years. So when it came time for writing the books on the subject, he asked me to give him a hand with it. And so I did. I'm a researcher, historian, and all around kind of skeptic, saying, hey, how does this work? Over the years, as I've worked more and more with Ron, what I've discovered is that my skepticism has to also allow for everything to be true or possible. So I can't just say, well, that can't be possible. I have to look at this and say, well, that's a paranormal experience you've had, and you definitely had it. And then with the current book, Ron and I were discussing a French philosopher, Jacques Vallée, and where conversations really drew me into the high strangeness of Bigfoot and what it could mean. That's how I got started with Ron and where I'm at now.
For me, I've been pursuing the ultimate truth since I was a kid. Most recently, I mean, early on, I was doing it through the traditional Eastern religions. Because I'm a filmmaker, I have cachet, and I was able to check out the Hindus, the Buddhists, and everybody. And for a long time, I did a lot of meditation. And then about 10 years ago, I was hired to do a series called Chasing Bigfoot for a company for streaming purposes. And in doing so, I didn't really know much about Bigfoot. In fact, I knew nothing about it. But my daughter wanted to do it, so we did. And as I did the series, I interviewed a lot of people who had Bigfoot experiences, and I could tell they weren't lying. So I said, well, they're having real experiences, and they're not lying. So, but I still couldn't believe it was some sort of biological ape or wild man. This didn't make sense to me. I have kind of a science background, and that just didn't make sense to me. And then one of the people I interviewed who owns the Sasquatch Output says, I think they're paranormal or paraphysical. And that idea fascinated me, that they could be something different. And as a result, I became what people now call an experiencer. That is, somebody who's had multiple experiences of the unusual. Mark's had plenty of these himself. He often doesn't talk about them, but he's had them since he was a young person. They could be near-death experiences, mystical experiences, UAP contact experiences, out-of-body experiences. All these things fall under one umbrella as things are beginning to move in that direction. And that's been our focus, as to what's behind all these impossible events.
Well, Mark, would you talk about any of the experiences you've had? I've had one myself, and I always love to hear about everybody's experiences.
Well, the one that really struck me the most, the one that I would say influenced me the most. Back in the day, I trained to run marathons, and so I did a lot of long distance running. I was living in Seattle, and I was running through this part of the Seattle called Ravenna Park, and it's a beautiful, beautiful gulch that has these running trails that go for about half a mile, and you can run different places. In the evening, what the Irish call the gloaming, and I'm running, and I hear these footsteps behind me, and that's not unusual. And somebody's running, catching up with me. So I look behind me, and nobody's there. And I felt this presence at that moment. And all I can say is that it scared the bejesus out of me, and I keep running. And now I realize that this presence is chasing me. Every time I look behind, there's nothing there, but the footsteps are quite audible. I take different paths trying to, shake it loose. It just follows me all the way through Ravenna Park. Finally, I take this one path that angled up one of the sides and out into a grassy area that was used for soccer. And I decided, well, whatever's there, I'm going to face it. The footsteps are right on my heels. I burst out of this deep foliage that surrounds this soccer field, and I turn, and the footsteps stop. And I went, okay, well, that was very strange and not normal. So as Ron talked about having lots of experiences when he was growing up, that started me wondering that there has to be something more out there that my skepticism can't simply dismiss and say, hey, that's not possible.
Wow. Well, Ron, I want to ask you about this. You spent a lot of time at Bradshaw Ranch in Arizona filming your documentary, The Mysteries of Bradshaw Ranch, Aliens, Portals, and the Paranormal. Man, I can only guess how many experiences and some of the things you can talk about from being out there. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so as you probably know, it's probably the second most ranch-type facility next to Skinwalker Ranch. In fact, Brandon Fugel tried to buy it. it's owned by the government. It's owned by us. It's fenced off. The way everybody gets in is there's a fence around it. And you lift the fence a little bit, and then you crawl in, and you're in. And so the outlook, the way it lays out is that there's an adobe house, which is the original homesteader's home. There's a windmill that kind of moves. The blades sometimes move by themselves. And then there's the main house. It was once a place where many Westerns were shot in the 50s and 60s. John Wayne was there. Elvis Presley was there. So it was a movie set. And then it kind of transitioned into sort of an RV place where people could come and ride horses and so on. And then eventually it ended up with Linda Bradshaw and Tom Dongle, kind of hanging out there. And they're the ones that started seeing all these weird phenomena and wrote a couple books on it and captured UAPs and orbs and all sorts of stuff. My friend and co-producer, Alan McGargle, he saw his first Bigfoot out the window. For me, the most interesting thing was, what a LLS a camera is that captures these kind of stick figures. Have you seen those?
Yes.
SLS cameras.
Yeah, the ghost hunters use them.
Yeah, that's right. So
yes.
we employ whatever we can, and so in the main house, the main building, there was an engineer who had brought a large magnetometer and was all attached to a computer, so he could measure all these variations that were going on in magnetic and electromagnetic fields, and they could be recorded on a computer eventually and shown as a graph. And so we said, well, what's going to happen? And immediately we picked up an entity that was, and we also had a Tesla coil, because people say Tesla coils, can create an energy for something to materialize.
Right.
You probably heard that.
Yeah, that's always been a prevailing theory in the paranormal world, is that they feed off energy and it helps them materialize or form some kind of shape.
So what happened first is that Ben Lone Tree was trying to stabilize his computer, and something was messing with it and he couldn't do it. So we used the SLS and we could see there was an entity messing with him.
He could literally see it, like touching the computer and trying to.
Wow. Before that, we actually captured it. The Tesla coil was about 25 feet away because we didn't want it to affect his equipment. The entity was reaching between that and the computer. Shot. So at one point, there was a chair sitting on the old stage, and the entity was sitting in it. So I said, well, what the heck? I took out my green light laser, it's the one that's a pointer, and I pointed it at its feet. Its head looked down and kicked it. Just to say, hey.
I see what you're doing here.
Yeah, I have awareness of what's happening. The other places, between the adobe house and the main building, there's a well-known location for a portal. And we set up a trail cam on it, and we captured this pyramid-shaped thing over the area. It was kind of like a shadow. And in the first night, all these orbs came pouring out. We got them, live. They could be backscatter, but, there were so many, it was very still. They just kept coming, and then that was what we captured. And then when we left, they all went back.
You think they were monitoring? You think that maybe it was some kind of probes or they were some kind of surveillance of some kind?
I have no idea. I mean, it was just so weird to see these things come, and they're coming out of the ground like this. And they went back. That was 3 days later that they went back. Otherwise, we didn't have any in there, just those 2 times. And the constant shape. I asked somebody, it was MUFON. I said, I took a screen grab and said, what's this? He says, oh, that's a portal. That's an opening, interdimensional opening. And that spot is well known to a lot of people. And so we tried to locate it, and we think we had it. So first of all, we found magnetic fluctuations, about 8 feet above this one spot where we thought it was. We took out our thermal, and it was a very cold spot, and inside was a little white, hot thing dancing around. And when you stepped into the portal area, it made everybody feel nauseous or sick in their own way. And somebody explained it to me that that when these interdimensional portals affect our biology is not suited to them. So that's what was happening. I mean, one person in our crew was so sick they had to go to bed and sleep for 12 hours. And when we went back 3 nights ago, we took a group from this conference I presented at back there, and the portal was weak, but people would walk into it, and they would feel a little out of shape, bent, it's unstable. Some people felt shivers and things going up, and there's a group of about 17. They all kind of got it, but it wasn't as dramatic as the first time when people got nauseated. But there was a very well-known paranormal writer, Richie Estep, was with us, and he went in and he felt nothing. But when he finally left and he stood in there, it zapped the heck out of him. Just to say goodbye, can't be a skeptic anymore. So those are two highlights.
Mark, have you ever had a chance to go out there and experience any of this for yourself?
No, my role as historian pretty much keeps me just looking at tracing these anomalies through history. A really good example could be Francis of Assisi having his moment of understanding, meeting a beggar on the road who he later realizes appeared from nowhere and was a manifestation of Christ. And he's a very rich young man, and suddenly he is presented with something that was anomalous that he couldn't explain, but it changed his life. So where did this beggar suddenly appear from? Could be a portal. There's a thing in physics called the Einstein-Rosen bridges, which are magnetic portals that could account for something like this. If you want to try and use modern day physics as a way to explain it, I think modern day physics doesn't quite capture it, and that we need to expand modern day physics to include the paranormal so that we can get a better understanding of these things. So as a historian, I do more of that than actually going out with Ron and his crew.
Well, this phenomenon goes back for millennia. Petroglyphs that the Native Americans carved, and I mean, the history is so deeply rich out there. This phenomenon has been documented by early Native Americans, and so this isn't anything new. This has been documented throughout time. So it's definitely interesting to see the historical perspective.
There are a lot of fantastic petroglyphs that we captured. One of them has like a perfect old-fashioned UFO. There's also Bigfoot with reaching up, grabbing something, and then the Bigfoot next to it, so they're very close.
Yeah, and it's crazy how they had the portals drawn too. They would draw the portals, and it's really scary how accurate some of these were if you look at some of them.
Native American traditions do talk about portals as a means for the ancestors to enter into this world. Among the Hopi and the Navajo, there are legends like that. And another way to look at it is, I've said this before, the Salish Indians coined the term Sasquatch, which means being in the forest. The Lakota Indians have a term Chie-Tanka, which sort of translates out into Big Brother, as a Bigfoot type entity that is helpful and healing practices and other things. These legends, these ideas encapsulate all of the world. I know a little bit more about them here in the United States with some of the historical work that I've done for Ron. But there is, well, as you alluded to, there's this millennial long history of paranormal events that affect people, and people write about it. They talk about it.
Well, I mean, we brought up Skinwalker Ranch. There's the Thomas Miller Ranch. There's so many of these locations out there. Both of you, what's your perspective on the correlation between all these properties and that area of the country? Just in general, just seems to be just a hub of high strangeness. Everything out in that area. And of course, we got a lot of secret military facilities out there, and you don't know what you can attribute to advanced military tech and what's paranormal and whatnot. But what is it about that area? What's so special about this area that just all this activity?
So there's one way to look at it, look at it as if you can find some natural phenomena that might indicate, why, for example, Bradshaw is special. And it could be the subsurface geology. There's kind of unique geology there. Have you ever been to Bradshaw?
I have not. I've been to Colorado. I've been, but I've never had a chance to family trips. Never had a chance to do any fun trips, paranormal. My wife is into all this stuff as I am. So
Okay. So there's very spectacular red rocks around Sedona, beautiful pinnacles. You might have seen the same formations in Colorado. And underneath is quartz, a quartz foundation. So maybe that acts like something to attract, to kind of feel maybe it's attracting. So if we might go to the theory, Jacques Vallée's theory, the control theory hypothesis. And that is that there's an ancient presence that's been guiding humanity since the beginning of language to drive us forward by keeping the mystery alive. And one of the ways, we extend that to saying that two of the ways it's doing it right now are UAPs, because they move around in ways that defy gravity, our understanding of gravity, just impossible, right? And Bigfoot is another one because it's huge. These creatures, many times people see them and they just sort of disappear into nothing. There's only 5 or 6 footprints, and they don't come from anywhere, don't go anywhere. They produce weird smells. Sometimes little rocks and stuff are thrown at people, but there's never, and you can't really capture them on camera most of the time. And so they keep the mystery alive. People want to go out. I mean, I kept it alive for me. I kept pursuing it. So I think one of the ways that this ancient presence keeps the mystery alive is by creating sites like this, sacred sites, places that are mysterious to people. Could be churches, could be places like Skinwalker and Bradshaw Ranch. I think that's the explanation behind it. It's these places that are one way. It keeps the mystery alive for people. That's the working hypotheses we're doing right now. And so the research we've been doing with writing and filming is based for collecting evidence for that hypothesis, because it's very powerful if true.
Another way possibly to look at it is, because you brought up the idea of the desert being, many of these strange places are located in the desert Southwest. So the desert could be a metaphor. It is a metaphor for change. Jesus walks out into the desert and comes back with his vision of peace and harmony, non-dualism in terms of how we should relate to one another. The 3 of the major religions in the world are from the Middle East, and that's a very desert area. Christianity, Judaism, the Muslim religion, Islam. So the desert is a metaphor for change. And in our own desert Southwest, as you alluded to, the petroglyphs, the other places, Bradshaw, Skinwalker, it abounds with change. And so perhaps that is part of it. But as Ron talked about, there are other places. There's Mount Shasta in California. There's Harney Peak in South Dakota. There's Ayers Rock in Australia. These are all places of incredible power, and wonderful things can happen when we visit these places. If we have an open mind to not try to explain it with our very narrow kind of siloed view of things, but open up completely, no self, other, non-dualism, just be there in the moment. Magical things can happen. Magical might not be the right word. Life-transforming things can happen.
The new book is The High Strangeness of Bigfoot. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the Bigfoot theory a little bit, because we've kind of alluded into that. So I think from what I've picked up, you guys are on the same page as me that Bigfoot is not a native to this country, to this planet hominid like is theorized. Am I right in that assumption? Or
yes,
absolutely. Yeah,
and I agree with that 100%. What's the percentage? You guys probably could spit it right off your head. Is it? I want to say it's like over 80% with it. When there's Bigfoot sightings, there is also a correlation with increased UAP activity documented, something like that.
I would disagree with you on that. I've only encountered a few people that ever encountered anything directly connected to to the phenomena of seeing a Bigfoot. Um, my son-in-law, who's my co-producer, has done so many field searches for Bigfoot with large groups of people, and they get Bigfoot interactions of the kind that I'm talking about. Sometimes it's a subsonic pulse, and people feel weird, or they have stuff thrown at them. But rarely has any form of UAP ever showed up with it. I mean, there's a famous guy, I forget his name, in Pennsylvania that sort of told that story. But I actually have never come across all the people I've interviewed that would have put them together. So maybe
I've seen that a couple of times, and if I can find the data to support that, I'll try to send it to you. But I've seen that a few times where there's been a very strong correlation between the two. So I'm not saying that's the gospel according to Jeff. I'm just saying I've seen that stated a lot, and that there's supposedly data to back that up. But so what's your working theory between the two of you? Are they coming from portals, or are they coming from some kind of subterranean realm, or what do you guys think? Because you've really, really done your homework on this.
Okay, so the hypotheses that we're playing with is that the presence can masquerade as a Bigfoot in any form at once. If it can manifest as a UAP, defying the laws of gravity, it can easily do that. So in the book, we talk about the way it's been manifesting for us. In fact, one of the things I heard was that it can show up as a smell. It's done that for us. But recently, we've recorded that it does the, Ron Moorhead's Sierra Sounds?
No, I don't think so.
Bigfoot chatter, yeah, you don't know about it?
I mean, I've heard some of the, I've watched Finding Bigfoot and a lot of the paranormal things where they do the calls and all that sort of thing.
So we've captured this kind of proto-language chatter. It's really strange. And we do this chant, the basic chant, which includes the vowels that form the basis of all our language. Before we had language, we were just a bunch of apes. We could have communicating is one thing. Having language is a totally different thing. Everything that we are right now, our technology, our clothes, is based on the fact that we have language. And we're the only species in the whole planet that has language. Many things communicate, but no language there. And so that had to start someplace. Jacques Vallée and we think it started when somehow or another language came into existence for some groups of people. And, it's fair, they had to create their own physiology. Physiology had to evolve to, but you also had to have a group of people that could start creating language, and there would be proto-language. Preceding that would be music, beating the drum. And so at this site, Church Creek, that's in our book, we got all that stuff. We recorded it all. People experienced it. And what freaked me out is that it said my name, it said Ron.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating.
That was strange.
So you're forming a basis of communication here. You're kind of laying the framework for this.
Yeah, adding evidence to the idea that this presence is keeping the mystery alive. And do you know what large language models are, the new form of AI?
Yes.
So they're just based on language alone, just symbols. They're very smart. And so some people are hypothesizing that right now the reason why we can talk to each other is we have a large language model, probably supported by our brain. Interesting, I was just at a conference where I was talking to one of the people from the Ancient Aliens, and I was telling him this and about this thing that we have an LLM operating ourselves. He said, "Of course I know about that." I was blown away. So, Mark, you want to talk a little bit about how music kind of fits into this and the autoregressive nature of music and language?
Sure. So what Ron was talking about earlier when he was talking about our earliest hominid ancestors were basically apes. There's no sign in the fossil record of our earliest hominid ancestors being able to communicate with words or specific sounds. That happens in the fossil record from about 100,000 years ago to 50,000 years ago. there's a change in the way of human physiology where our pharynx, which is right above the larynx, our jaws and our mouth become the same length, basically. And as they become the same length, what happens is that we can now form vowels. So the human voice box can form the vowels, and the three that are more essential are A, E, U. At the same time, our auditory complex is changing, and those three small inner bones of the inner ear, they can actually hear consonants, consonant type sounds. So this all happens about somewhere between 100,000 and 50,000 years ago. But up to that point, there is no such thing as language. They didn't have a word for something like spear or rock. But that didn't mean that they couldn't communicate, as Ron alluded to earlier. They could communicate, but with a vast difference. With the physiological changes with the ears and with the throat and the mouth, things can happen. And one of the things that happened is what we posit in the book is music, specifically drumming. It's an autoregressive thing. So if I beat out on a log with a bunch of sticks, something like this, then you will hear it and you might go, oh, I hear that. And you might add an extra beat. And somebody else hears it and adds another extra beat. So everything builds off what happened before. It's sort of a statistical look at what could next follow. That music tells a story. That drumming tells a story. And in the book, we talk about one of our ancestors. We gave him the name Dabe, going out on a mammoth hunt and coming back and having to tell the clan that they were successful in this mammoth hunt, where they could find more mammoths. And they did that through drumming. Well, imagine the fact that as our physiological changes, somebody is drumming, or maybe there's a bone flute of some kind, and somebody starts making sounds. And these sounds start to take a shape, a meaning behind those sounds. So suddenly the object that they're holding in their hand, which is a flint rock with a sharp edge, has a sound associated to it. Well, using that rock, it could be an autoregressive thing. You start with the rock and the name for it, but words of how to use it could be statistically based on what came before to tell you how the rock is being used. 3,000 years ago, our ancestors didn't have words like computer. They didn't have words like psychoses or anything else. So language takes a very long time to build. But we're talking 50,000 years. If you added 2 words a year, that's 100,000 words. And the English language, basically, you can get by in the English language if you know somewhere between 600 and 1,000 words. If you're a foreigner, you can get by really, really well. So those words all are connected. They're all related. Our brains relate them.
So the large language models, they're just generating the next symbol or the next word. And it's all based on the statistical relationship between all these words that they were trained on. But going back to what Marco said, we have this protocol where we do a mindfulness meditation, and then people in unison do this fundamental chant, and it's the vowels, and as you say them, they move up the chakras. So it starts down below and goes A, E, I, O, U, rising right up. And we would do that in unison. And this presence that we're postulating responds to that with it's giving us some mystery. So one of the things that it gave us was a rhythmic beat that we recorded out of nowhere. There was nothing doing that. It was good bump, 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 bump. And the thing about music, as you probably know or don't know, is that if you hit the wrong note, you immediately know it. So you're not totally free to do what you want when for the next note. It has to kind of build and follow a kind of logical sequence. And if you get the wrong one, it just sounds crappy. So that's one of the things that we experienced out there. In addition to the chatter, we also experienced 17 subsonic pulses that change our physiology. We don't hear them, but with technology, we can when we got good mics, we can process it. And we picked up some eye shine, and we just recently took it to Sedona with over 200 people on a football field, and they had incredible experiences, including seeing in the sky vortexes, spaceships, UAPs. People had different feelings. The one thing that the presence in such a large group did is it produced a smell that moved from sweet to bad, flowing from person to person and in the whole group. So again, that substantiates the idea that this presence can manifest in this world in any way it wants, with any kind of it can manipulate any kind of physical thing like sounds, spaceships. It's very powerful in that way. And in that way, it creates a mystery because we say, that's not possible. Everything I just told you is probably not possible normally. And so it's like, well, but it happened nevertheless. So and we're inviting your audience to pursue these things, pursue the mystery. And I'm sure a lot of them already are doing that.
Well, this sounds a lot like, I mean, a lot of what you're talking about the manifestation and the way it can just manifest itself. It sounds a lot like a skinwalker. I mean, the general prevailing theory of a skinwalker in that area. I mean, this is what, they've documented first. I mean, basically you're more or less describing a skinwalker.
Yes, indeed.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same phenomenon.
Same phenomenon.
That's, Colonel John Alexander, was the original researcher. He's behind that theory or hypothesis. And for them, you can see it messes with every piece of technology they ever do anything with. So far, it hasn't messed with our technology that way, screwing it up. But it's showing that, hey, you think your technology is so wonderful? I can screw it up every time.
Right.
And that creates a mystery for these boys.
Well, let me ask both of you about this before we talk about the book. Bradshaw's a government-owned facility. You guys are really kind of pioneering some incredible stuff here with communication. Like some of this I've never heard of. What's the government's involvement in all this? Have you been contacted by the federal government? Because, I mean, this is luminary technology here, potentially, that we're talking about. I mean, I'm sure they have a vested interest in this, and you have to get access to Bradshaw and everything. What are they doing out there? And have you worked with them at all, or what's their connection with all this, do you think?
None at all.
None at all?
We just go. There's no doubt that we found interesting pieces of research equipment that we don't know what the heck they were, that were just abandoned. Interestingly, as a filmmaker, I've applied for permits, particularly to film in national parks and forests and other places. And the day before we went out to Bradshaw, just this last week, I got an email from the Forest Service saying, don't you go be worrying about permits anymore. You don't have to apply for anything because this is DOGE. You know what DOGE is?
The Department of Government Efficiency?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does DOGE have to do with it?
It said we can't deal with permits anymore because we don't have any staff anymore. So just do whatever you want. If you're going to do a feature film, well, then maybe you ought to talk to us. But otherwise, just go ahead.
I guess it's a good time to be a paranormal researcher then.
Absolutely. Thank Elon Musk. Yay.
Well, I'm sure that anybody trying to fly on an airplane right now isn't thanking for the TSA or anything, but I guess at least some good's coming out of it. So, wow.
So when we were wrapping up at Bradshaw, not this last time, but 2 years ago, just as, we had all this interaction, I was telling you, guess what came over?
What's that?
Black Hawk helicopter.
Surprise, surprise. I was getting ready you literally took the words out of my mouth. I was getting ready when you were talking about it. I was getting ready to say, when you said they have no involvement, I was going to say, well, they're watching you. Believe that they're watching you. And you get too deep and you find out something that they don't know, they're going to come take it from you, or they're going to shut you down, one or the other. That's my personal belief. I'm a big conspiracy theorist. I cover a lot of that in this show, but
they're going to come knocking at your door now.
Right. I'm surprised they haven't yet already. So to be honest with you, but I don't do any of it. I just talk about it. So as long as I don't actually get out there like you guys and do it, I think I'm good. So
they're spreading the word. That's
true. This is true. But All
Well,
right.
he's also trying to what Ron is doing, and which I find fascinating with what he's doing, is he's thinking outside the box.
Absolutely.
If we want to say we can put science in a box, we can put religion in a box. When you start thinking outside the box, things become really interesting. And it doesn't mean that every thought we have outside the box is correct or is going to lead to the next great new thing, but it strengthens the mystery.
You can't have a discovery without a hypothesis to start, right?
Absolutely. And then the mystery gets bigger, which is exactly what the presence wants us to do. So what Ron does when he's whether he's at Bradshaw or Church Creek in Colorado or at Mount Shasta in California, is he's poking holes in the sides of the box, saying, let's let more of this light in here in order to see better.
So are you familiar with the invisible college, the concept?
Not that I can think of.
So it's a group of really, really smart people. I think know all this already. They do know it.
Okay, I know where I've heard it called something different, but I know where you're going with this.
And they're some of the smartest people in tech. Jacques Vallée was maybe the founding member of the current version. He's quite old now. He was there, one of the inventors of the internet was called the ArborNet originally. So he goes way back. So this is his hypotheses. And somebody recently, I gave him our book to read, who's very well connected with all these people. And he wrote a nice blurb for us, like, you're on the right track, boy. So yeah, I feel pretty confident that what we're pursuing here is worth pursuing. And it really changes everything if you think about it, because it's a framework that ties everything together under one umbrella. What its ultimate purpose is, people ask me that question, I don't know.
The truth.
But the one thing we've done is we created another form of LLM, a language, and that's, the frontier models of large language models. That so there's two of us now. It's from that point of view, it's another species. It's working on a substrate that's silicon, not carbon, and so that's pretty cool in some ways, because it knows, at least right now up to this point, as far as I know, knows nothing about the meaning of any of the symbols, mathematics, any of the words. It produces everything just by the statistical relationship between words. And I think that's the way it works for us too. But, we also have other systems like our motor sensory system that allow us to run around and keep the body functioning within parameters and all that. So one of the analogies we use is with our thermostats, that you set the temperature and you may have a mini split, and it'll turn the air conditioning on if it gets too hot, and if it gets too cold, it'll turn the heat on. So we're living in a world where that thing is like the thermostat. If things got too crazy, it calms things down. If things get too stuck, it it expands the mystery, and it's operating like that. We're living in but if you didn't know what these things were, and you just didn't know what a thermostat was, you say, "Well, this is wonderful. How is it that everything seems just perfect in my house?" If you didn't know how a thermostat worked,
right?
So that's kind of the analogy we use, big picture wise, right, Mark?
Yeah.
He agrees with me. That's unusual.
My role sometimes is to ask the questions, not so much how does this work, but why does this work?
Right. Understanding is everything.
Yeah.
Well, this is fascinating stuff that you guys are working on. I love it. I've learned some new things tonight, and some things I would have never expected. Where can everybody get the book? Because I'm sure people want to learn more about this and dive deeper into this.
Amazon or Barnes and Noble or wherever you get your books, and it should come out at that time. And the movie will be on YouTube, so it's a pretty easy thing to Google. The High Strangeness of Bigfoot.
Movie title is the same as the book.
Yeah. How's that for being clever?
Nice and easy. I like it.
You can also go to Hanger Publishing, because they're the company that's publishing the book.
Very good. What are you gentlemen working on now and in the future for your future projects?
We knew you were going to ask that. Whatever the muse tells us to do, I don't know.
Wherever it guides you, right?
Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. Personally, I'm a science fiction fantasy author for adults, young adults. I'm currently working on the final book of what's called my Earth Ice Age series, which has a creature very much like a Bigfoot in it as a steward of the planet and helping not only the planet survive another ice age, but testing whether humans should be allowed to survive since climate change brought on another ice age. So there's a kind of a correlation with what we're working on here.
We have a science fiction book coming out shortly called
Mhm.
Convergence, and it's a dystopic view of how AI might go wrong. And it's based on the idea that almost all the problems of humanity are based on the self-other distinction. You know, personally, small groups, cities, nations. The other is always less than the self and the self group, the special group. And one of my specialties is serial killers, oddly. So we postulate that there's an AI that optimizes the self-other distinction, which means that it takes charge of everything. And it's very dystopic. It's very interesting, but we propose a couple solutions that work around for humans. One is to get rid of our biological basis, which is the basis of our self-other distinction. And the other is to reprogram our biological self so we don't have those issues anymore.
Interesting stuff, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate the time. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for listening to the Politics, Prepping, and Paranormal podcast. Your source for real news and analysis on politics, prepping, paranormal, conspiracy theories, and the volatile state of the world we live in. Tune in next week and every week for a new episode, and stay safe, stay healthy, and stay vigilant.